The funny thing about mental health is that while it isn't all fun and games, that might not be a bad place to start. This is my conversation with Keith Wakeman. What if the truth came in a gel cap and we could just pop it in our mouths and forget about it? Well, it doesn't, and we can't. But we can laugh in the face of reality while plotting our survival. Welcome to the Truth Tastes Funny podcast. I am your host, Hersh Rephun, and if my guests can handle the truth, so can you. Open wide, folks. Here it comes. My guest today is Keith Wakeman. He's the CEO of SuperBetter, which uses the psychology of gameplay to build skills, overcome obstacles, and achieve goals. And Keith, thanks so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. I look forward to it.
Well, tell us a little bit, because I know over 1 million people have played, SuperBetter, but break it down for the audience, because it sounds great, in terms of what it accomplishes, but what is it?
Yeah, so SuperBetter it's best known as an app, and the app uses we call it a framework or a methodology that uses, as you described in the beginning, the psychology of gameplay in real life or whole life to overcome obstacles, build skills, and achieve goals. So if you were a therapist, you would look at it and say, wow, that's a psychological framework that's helping people look at the world differently and improving their psychological strengths and helping them be more successful, right? But the 1 million+ people that played it, they look at it and say, wow, this is a way that I can use the same mindset that I use when I play games in the real world. So I can go for my epic win, which is my personal goal. I recruit allies for support. So I've got a support system, and each day I'm completing gameful activities that move me towards my epic win. So I'm activating power-ups, quick, simple activities that give me positive energy. Usually they evoke positive emotions. They battle a bad guy every day, which is an obstacle that gets in the way of my goal or my epic win. And I complete quests, which are steps towards my epic win. And so, those and a couple of other simple, gameful rules create that structure. And it turns out that it's a really powerful structure that helps people to build resilience and improve mental health and recover and overcome from obstacles.
Right. And this was designed by Jane McGonigal.
That's right.
Yeah. Fill us in a little bit on how all of that happened.
Yeah. So Jane McGonigal is the co-founder of our company. She is, a researcher, a world-renowned game designer, a futurist. She's recognized globally as really being a key thought leader in how we can use the science and the psychology of games to improve real lives. And so she created SuperBetter out of a personal incident in her own life. She has an amazing TED Talk with her story. It's called the game that TED Talk's name is The Game That Gives You 10 Extra Years of Life. She has another really amazing TED Talk too that you should see too, called Gaming Can Make a Better World. But the one about her story of SuperBetter is the first that I mentioned. And so Jane, created SuperBetter out of a personal incident in her own life. She had a concussion. It didn't heal properly. Over time, Jane experienced anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. Jane's damaged brain was saying, Jane, you have no reason to live. And she finally got to a point that she said, I'm going to either create a game to help myself heal, or I'm going to kill myself. And fortunately for the world, she created a game that's now SuperBetter and has helped over 1 million people overcome obstacles in their own lives. Now, the original SuperBetter app was developed by a company in San Francisco. Jane had gotten together with a couple of co-founders of that company, and they did some really good things and pushed out the original app and got some studies going, but they ran out of cash within 6 months of launching the app. So there was no company behind SuperBetter for a long time. I had gotten to know Jane during that process. One of her co-founders at the time was a lifelong friend that kind of grew up in the same industry and innovation space that I did. And so, I was kind of helpful, as friends are helpful in those kinds of ventures. And so, I was watching after that company dissolved, I was just watching how, even though there was no company behind SuperBetter, this amazing, passionate community was forming around it. And I was watching how the initial studies were going to come out and saw that there were going to be really good, outcomes. And more importantly, perhaps I was looking at the macro trends and just like, wow, the challenges around mental health and well-being, especially mental health and well-being among youth and young adults, it was clear that there was the major problem was happening and on the horizon. And so kind of given the market needs and the opportunities and my background in, branding and innovation, it just made a lot of sense for Jane and I to found this company and really be the ones to take it, from 1 million to 50 million players in the next 5 years.
I mean, that is why I was so intent on having you on, was this moment, this crisis. It's staggering. As a parent, the best way that I can describe it as a parent with kids in various ages
Mhm.
is that it seems like mental health issues have become more sophisticated for the child.
Mm.
That all of a sudden they have this level of ideation and negative self-talk and things that you might have expected a teenager to say, you'll see in a grammar school student. And I have relatives in education in other countries who are telling me that the same thing. The kids in second and third grade, kids are the trauma and the vulnerability and the fear that parents have as a result seems to me to be at a level that I don't remember ever seeing.
It's a crisis, and everything that you've shared is spot on. So kids are getting older, younger, and not all of that is helpful for mental health and well-being. And it's a global issue, but we see the trends and the dynamics, here in the U.S. I mean, the trends have been going on for a decade. So they started around 2011, 2012. Between 2012 and 2017 for youth, between the ages of 12 and 17, there was over about a 62 or 63% increase in incidence of and prevalence of depression. Right. So it started well before the pandemic, but the pandemic kind of put added pressure onto the lives of our children. So the pandemic is really what put it on the world's radar and the school systems and parents, because the last 2 or 3 years have just been really, really difficult for students. So the CDC tracks this as well. They did a study that showed that last year in 2021, 44% of high school students felt overwhelming feelings of sadness or hopelessness as well. So it is pervasive. It's unique. It's fairly unique, the trends and the increase to youth and young adults. So the trends and the dramatic growth is not necessarily happening among the baby boomers and the Gen Xers, but we really see it, around Gen Z and millennials, especially the younger half of the millennial generation. It's just really, the trends are there, and we call it a crisis. It's a crisis level.
Yeah. And you say that the trend, if you're looking at trends and they started, 11, 12 years ago. So, we live in it's so, we live in such in the moment that, we think, oh, well, of course this is happening. Boris Johnson just survived a no confidence vote. It's like, well, no, this started before COVID. This started before any kind of crises that people are going through in the moment. So this has its roots earlier on. So do you know what what was brewing that pushed this trend out there?
Yeah, so there are a lot of really smart researchers and PhDs that have been working in this area. It can be hard at the population level to show causation, but it's easy to see correlation. And the strongest correlations, what happened, the tipping point in 2011 is when, the mass prevalence of smartphones. And what did smartphones allow, young people to do? Well, they spend more time on technology. I really appreciate the research of a woman named Jean Twenge. And so she follows, she's been following this trend, and she's been able to correlate social media as one of the causal factors. So there are studies that she has published and pointed to that shows that, when the usage of social media starts to get above, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours a day, that's when we see the greatest correlations to increased levels of depression, anxiety, and so on. So there's a relationship with social media. We're not necessarily, we don't know enough to say that that's the only problem, but certainly
Yeah.
it's a correlative issue and as well. Now, what happens in social media, some of the more recent study shows the correlation is much higher with social media, and there's very, much less with kind of, video game playing or watching TV or those kinds of things. So there is, it's not tech, the more the research comes out, the more it's not technology in general. But what does happen is, because young people and people like me are on our devices, a lot more, it means we're not doing things that were once protective factors. So, get sleep.
Uh-huh.
Sleep is a big one, right? We're all, many people are sleeping less, and our young people in around the world in the U.S. are sleeping less. And getting adequate sleep is a protective factor that helps with mental health and depression and anxiety prevalence. Getting outside and, in nature and physical exercise and those kinds of things, again, as we're spending, more time on devices, we're spending less time in other kinds of protective factors as well. So it's in some cases it is, I think the relationships, especially with young girls and social media is, fairly strong. But in other cases, it's, what is social media replacing and how is that impacting overall mental health and well-being of youth and young adults?
Well, that's a good point, Keith, because I hadn't thought of that as well, which is it's not just what they're doing on social media, it's what it's taking away. The protective factors as you describe them. So it's a double whammy. They're getting engaged in hyper emotional and also hyper disseminated stuff because you one person can send a message out to all their friends, everybody they've ever met, people who don't even know them, and it can create a firestorm. And that, isn't the healthiest thing to, on the one hand, this idea of social media that connects us, that allows us to share emotions, it allows us to put our ourselves out in a way, there's good parts to that.
Mhm.
But the idea that you can destroy things as well, destroy your reputation, destroy someone else destroys your reputation, and it's all exponentially out of control. And then that's also taken away the things that would have made someone feel a little more secure, a little happier, a little healthier, a little more well-rounded, probably just the exposure to the outdoors and things that they're not doing, that are good to start young, So, and what age? So SuperBetter, what's the age range? How does that work?
Yes. Yeah. So today, SuperBetter is anyone over the age of 13 can create an account. We're introducing new features and some enhancements this fall that will actually make SuperBetter available for youth of all age. For children under the age of 13, there are special regulations called COPA laws, and it's to protect young people and their privacy for, on any type of a web or digital or mobile device. And so we're adding, new features. One of the things that needs to happen for youth under 13 is a parent, or in some cases a teacher, needs to and authorize the account, right? So we're building that in for the future because we want to start taking SuperBetter to, also be a tool that can be used with younger children as well.
Yeah, I was thinking that, and then not having played it, or and I'm looking forward to experiencing it. And gameplay obviously has been a part of various therapies and therapeutic, and is something that's used with younger children.
Mhm.
What do you think about the fact that it's technology that's being used to combat a problem that isn't strictly technological, but is we're like fighting fire with fire in a way?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a great question. And what we see and our belief is that, kind of the answer is always in the combination of high touch and high tech. So technology is a tool and we should use that tool, but it's also not a tool, especially in the case of mental health and well-being, where it's like, well, here's an app, go figure it out on your own. So philosophically, and kind of where we're taking the platform is to make it, today Subeta is a great self-help app that, many people recommend, teachers, therapists, others recommend it to young people. But where we're going is, a platform that is also a tool, a practical and engaging tool that can be very, very helpful as well. Now around kind of the technology for good, Subeta is definitely a tech for good platform. We fit all the criteria where we're recognized as global leaders in the science and psychology of games. And there's a lot of psychology and understanding around all of that. So the knowledge that we have to drive more usage and create business models and revenue models that really play on and would make the company a lot of money. We're not going to do that. So there are no algorithms that drive. We're not an advertising model business that uses algorithms that are intended to keep young people or anybody on the platform longer. We see philosophically we're a tool that's there when people need us. And the research behind SuperBetter shows that any interaction every day leads to positive outcomes. So there's no reason for us to encourage people to stay on SuperBetter for longer than they would need to. We also won't sell data, or the privacy is extremely important to us as well. So that's not that's not our monetization kind of a model either.
Yeah, if we could get other technology companies that are simply in the profit sector to take those considerations in mind, when they're selling their stuff, if they could just be a little more human, for lack of a better word. And some are well intended, some stand out for some of the standards. Like I believe, I'm not an expert in this area at all, but Roblox, for example, has been exhibiting responsibility when it comes to kids and all of that, because this is a cultural thing that we have a responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
If we start a business, if we have an endeavor, you don't have to be in the public service as an entity in order to follow public best practices for mental health.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned 13 and up. So what is the trust factor there when you're trying to get teenagers
Mm-hmm.
to get on board with something and to have an attraction, appeal, faith in something? What is that challenge like?
Yeah. So SuperBetter uses the psychology of gameplay. So we're not a video game, but we borrow from the popularity and the cultural phenomenon,
Sure.
which is video games. So in the US, 75% of children under the age of 13 regularly play some type of video game. Among adults, it's 2/3. So the appeal is very, it's familiar, but it's also different enough. So to be able to use that mindset of gameplay in the real world to achieve goals it's very familiar, but again, it's also very, very novel. So it's fascinating, really digging into Gen Z and looking at the research about, who they trust and who they don't. It's fascinating research. So today, from an institutional perspective, who do young people not trust, right? Well, certainly they don't trust the government, the presidency, the Congress, all that kind of stuff. Surprisingly, organized religion scores very, very, very low. Big corporations, score very, very low. But who do they trust? Gen Z, and this is actually not just Gen Z, but
Yeah.
is small businesses. And while SuperBetter is recognized as one of the leaders within our space, we're very much a small business, and we've chosen to bootstrap to our success so that we can control our North Star, which is impact and this bold vision of unlocking the heroic potential of 50 million youth in the next 5 years. And so we've kind of set up our system and how how companies fund. Everything is a system in a company, right? So everything from planning to target to product to execution to marketing, right? It's all a system. And if one part is, disproportionately profit motivated, then the North Star becomes, well, what's our quarterly numbers? Did we hit, what kind of a return are we delivering to our investors? All those things are important, but which is the North Star? What's the first thing that we want to talk to, at a quarterly board meeting? We want it to always be impact. How are we helping, to impact and help contribute to ending the youth mental health crisis? And what do those numbers look like? And of course, the second or third thing we're going to talk about is, how are we doing financially, and, where can we invest, and, what's the profitability? All that kind of stuff is really important too. But to have the best shot at achieving a really bold North Star, the whole system needs to be aligned.
One good thing I think that's happening over the last few years is this North Star. It's a great analogy, is this North Star driven model where for-profit companies, nonprofit organizations can all be driven by a purpose, by a North Star that they don't deviate from. Now, if you're making a cereal bar or something, you could have your North Star of a certain thing to nutrition or whatever it might be. But this is more of a step back where you say, look, I have an ethos that has to accomplish certain things for humanity and for the consumers and for everybody involved. So I can't deviate from that. And this is a time where people are in such disarray and in such flux that, the flip side of it is they have to survive. But I think we're recognizing through some of the horrors that we're experiencing as a species, we're recognizing the need for mental health to not be swept under the rug. Let's talk for a minute about the stigma of mental health, which I've noticed it's yet another cog in that wheel that turns on social media. Because if someone were to reach out on social media and say, hey, I need some help here, or I'm having a hard day, or I'm, you know, it's just everything that we say. We could say something on Twitter. You could say something. So what is the stigma? What is the stigma's role in this, in this environment?
Yeah. So mental health has always had a lot of stigma. We've seen progress, especially in the past few years, and especially among younger generations. But there's still a lot of stigma out there, and so what we do with SuperBetter. I mean, SuperBetter is it's a game played in real life. It's our core promise is that we build resilience, and that resilience leads to skills and overcoming obstacles and achieving goals. So it's a very flexible platform with resilience as the core. Now the reality is two of the top 10 reasons that people play SuperBetter today are to overcome depression and anxiety. So we're within that mix, but because SuperBetter is a platform and can be used for all kinds of good and obstacles, what one element is, just because I'm playing SuperBetter doesn't mean I have a mental health challenge. So that's at one level. If somebody looked over and if you're in public transport, and saw that you had the SuperBetter app on your phone, they'd be like, oh, what's going on with you, kind of a thing. It wouldn't be that at all. At the same time, we're part of the conversation that mental health is normalized. It's just like it should be normalized like our physical health, and especially today, almost everybody dealing with the stress of the pandemic. I mean, whether it's low level or high level, but things like anxiety are pervasive, or feelings of low mood, right? So we're kind of all in this together, and so we have a seat at the table with our partners and allies, to help spread the positive message, to reduce the stigma. And a lot, many companies are using, SuperBetter's not at this stage, but they're using, celebrities, who can tell their lived stories around dealing with mental health to help reduce that stigma. So there's a lot of good things happening to reduce the level of stigma. And again, this is our approach with SuperBetter, and kind of the message that we try to elevate, is very consistent with reducing that stigma.
Yeah, that's why I started the Truth Tastes Funny podcast, was because truth does taste funny. It's weird. The real life is weird. It's not clean, and it's not pristine, and it's not perfect. And, on the entrepreneurial side, there's always a lot of talk, which is perfectly reasonable, about learning from your mistakes. Why can't we have the same room emotionally? If you bang your knee, you skin your knee, people say, how bad is it? Oh, well, it's fine. It's just a scratch. Or I just got a bruise. Or, ooh, that took the skin off. It's not like that with mental health. You say, oh, I'm feeling a little depressed, and people are worried, or like, oh, that guy's is depressed. It's like, I realize that whatever the clinical term you use, depression, being sad, being seasonal affective disorder, which is one that I like to talk about, living in a place where the climate can be brutal. Why can't we just say, yeah, I was feeling very sad, or I was feeling very depressed? And so I love the idea of gameplay, the rules of gameplay, because it really is better. It is about making yourself better than you are at this moment. And anybody could be doing that. And in fact, I think as SuperBetter continues to grow, it will become more of an emblem of health to be playing it. Do you think that as human beings, we take the world itself too seriously?
Oh, that's a really big question. I think as humans, I'm going to answer it a little bit of a different way. So humans are designed in a certain way. Our brains are designed in a certain way.
Yeah.
None of that is, none of the way that we were designed, is for the environment that we're living in today. Right. And so, it's not necessarily surprising that, we're seeing physical and chronic diseases have increased dramatically in the last, few decades because of that. And in some respects, it's not surprising to see, mental health challenges as well. We've got these, especially in technology, we've got almost these godlike capabilities, that are really, in some cases, exploiting minds that were developed for, a very different kind of a world. So, are we taking the world too seriously? I don't know. I mean, there are serious issues to be addressed in
Sure.
the world, and we don't, And those are really important. How we approach those are really important. Jane McGonigal has a new book, called Imaginable, that really leverages kind of her expertise in game science plus futures thinking to help the readers learn how to imagine potential futures, so that we can be more prepared for them, and also, take action so that we can be, more motivated to make those changes. So there are tools that we can use to, kind of help ourselves feel more empowered to deal with some of those more serious issues, especially those big issues, that often can feel out of our control. And there's a lot of those right now. So there's kind of that one saying, there are a lot of serious issues, happening in the world.
Sure.
And those are placing a burden on many people's mental health. And so there is, I believe how do we prepare ourselves to control what we can do, but also how do we in our own minds interpret the things that we can't control right now, and not let those become burdens that increase the amount of stress, and the burden that we have on our own mental health as well. So I think there are those two dynamics happening at the same time.
Right. Very good points. And the fact that we have we've gotten ahead of ourselves. We've shown off, our ability to create all these amazing things and do these amazing things. And it's like a Star Trek episode, where there's some aliens, light years ahead of us, but it's, they've wiped out half the planet, whatever it might be. They're too smart for their own good. And in a way, I think that's what happened to us. We're not stupid. We're maybe too smart. So when I say taking it too seriously, I think you put a good kind of point on that, because that's kind of what I think I was looking for is, not that we take it so seriously, but it overwhelms us. And given the overwhelm that's out there, two more things for you. One, what can we all do as a concrete step toward better mental health, which is a big general question, but you can take that wherever you feel is right.
Mm-hmm.
And then how can we support SuperBetter, and what is happening there that we can engage with?
Terrific. So, what we can do around our own mental health. So there are a lot of good, tools and resources in the world for mental health. So depending on the nature of mental health, it may be find a therapist, find someone that you can talk to. I realize there are access issues, and it's not that's not in every case, and that's not as straightforward as it should be. But that very much is a tool. We can also, one of the things that, Jane wrote a New York Times bestselling book called SuperBetter, The Power of Living Gainfully. And in the introduction, she talks about, how, we're the hero of our own story. We're stronger than we know. We're surrounded by potential allies. So some really big kind of foundational, elements. But as she describes, kind of what some of those things means, she points out something that's profound but simple, which is we have the ability to control our attention and therefore our thoughts and feelings, right? So when we're in these feelings of overwhelm, and we're doom scrolling on Twitter, and kind of feeling like that, sometimes it can be helpful just to take a step back and say, I have the ability to control my attention. If doom scrolling on social media is not serving me right now, I have the ability to stop, or I have the ability to, not watch this, media channel or that media channel because of the way that it impacts me, or how it makes me feel. So that level of control is really powerful. Now, SuperBetter, we have published studies that show, in particular, a randomized control trial at University of Pennsylvania shows that playing SuperBetter for 30 days significantly reduces anxiety and depression. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people are using SuperBetter within that area. There are, in the world of mental health solutions, there are a lot of organizations, really focused on, treatment, and that's good. We're, as we continue to grow and kind of see where SuperBetter has its, and while we can resolve, we can help reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression. One of the biggest areas that we can do is to help build skills, protective factors, and to reduce the barriers that get in the way of mental health as well. And so, the other area is to kind of think about, we don't have to wait until we're in a mental health crisis to get, to get help. As humans, we're all all aspects of our health and well-being are interrelated. So our physical health and our mental health and our emotional, social health. And so we can care for all of those, 4 areas. And SuperBetter actually has a mechanism that we call it building resiliency, either social resilience or mental resilience or emotional or social resilience, right? So we have a way that helps to ensure that, as we're taking care of ourselves, that we're doing it in a whole person, kind of a way as well. So those are things, prevention, of course, seeking resources, where that are available to help. And so again, there are a lot of good resources that are out there. And I love that you asked about how you can help SuperBetter. So, we're planning the introduction this fall of a new feature, and we call it Squad Play. So I alluded to, today SuperBetter is a great self-help app. Squad Play transforms SuperBetter to not only be a great self-help app, but also a tool that can be used to help and support and empower groups and communities. So with Squad Play, and one of our targets is teachers, a teacher will be able to host a SuperBetter challenge that they can either select from our library or create on their own, but they can host a challenge for their classroom, for their students. And so, one of the use cases,
Great.
So teachers, almost all teachers today, believe in the power of social emotional learning, which is deeply connected to mental health, right? So, but it can be hard to find, especially at the middle and high school and older, levels, kind of really practical and engaging tools to help. So SuperBetter, this one of the use cases for SuperBetter that we've gotten really positive response on is, this could be a great tool for teachers in those areas. So that's coming. So look for that. We're also, we talked a little bit about, our North Star and how we want to stay focused on our North Star and how, how funding allows that. So we're bootstrapping and we're using, revenue from some contracts and, to, fund the new features, but by bringing in additional funds, we can grow faster. And, because our goal is 50 million and there's a crisis of mental health, there's good reasons to grow faster. So, we are, we're an organization that's been built up from a grassroots standpoint. We've never spent a penny on advertising to get to, over 1 million people having played, and people talk about SuperBetter and media likes to write about it. And, some people see Jane's TED Talk or read the book, but we see ourselves as a small business that's there for the people that we're serving. And so we're doing something really unique, which is a crowdfunding investment campaign. And we're partnering with an organization called Republic. And it really takes advantage of some fairly recent, in the last 10 years, regulations that have changed some of the rules that allow kind of a different approach to investing. Historically, investment in the private market, so things that are not on the stock market, would have been, was limited to institutional investors and, high net worth individuals that have adequate income or net worth to qualify as an accredited investor. And so, in 2012, the Jobs Act, was approved that authorized kind of a new way to fund, earlier stage and startup small businesses like SuperBetter. So Republic is one of those platforms. They're one of the first. They're amazing and well vetted within that area. And so we are entering a phase where it's called test the waters, but it's a phase where we're asking individuals that might be interested in joining our journey and addressing youth mental health and being part of that with us as a financial stakeholder, to express their interest on Republic for that type of activity. If youth mental health is an issue that you're passionate about and really believe in, and you want to be part of our story and our journey, it's an option. And we would love to invite you to, look at the Republic field page. And again, if it's something that's of interest, we would encourage you to register that interest level.
Great. I mean, look, we're going to do this together. This is how any progress is made, with buy-in from whether it's your audience or whether it's within your audience, the enthusiasm that comes from it. But the reason SuperBetter jumped out at me was because we're all looking for innovative solutions. In this case, it's been tried and it's proven to work. It's a matter of it growing and developing and becoming more prevalent. The world that we live in at this moment, and using every possible avenue to affect a positive outcome, to be one of the good guys, to be part of the solution. And I really appreciate your coming on, Keith. And I wish you tremendous continued success with this, because everybody of every age needs tools that work and that don't deny the reality of an immersion in a virtual universe to a great extent.
Mm-hmm.
Every day we hear about the metaverse, every day we hear about crypto, and NFTs, and it's fascinating. So there's great stuff. There's great aspects to all of it, but it isn't all designed to make us healthier. And this is.
That's exactly right. And I appreciate you having me on the podcast today. And this has been a fascinating discussion for me as well.
Thanks so much for tuning into Truth Tastes Funny. If you enjoyed the experience, please leave a 5-star review and share this podcast with your friends.